So let's move on to what the life of Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her, says about careers and women. This is a sensitive issue, and many women feel that Islam disfavors women from having careers. But this is not exactly the case, because it depends what type of career the woman has, the environment of that career, and what use of that career is to others and herself. So let's get back to Fatima Zahra and see if she had any sort of career or not. The land of Fadak was a piece of land granted to her, gifted to her from her Holy Father, Prophet Mohammads, peace be upon him and his family. And it was much more than a pretty garden with fruits and flowers that required simple gardening like planting tomatoes. No, it was much more than that. It was a piece of land with worldly blessings. So Fatima Zahra would have to have the skills to manage it somehow, to run it as well. Well, she didn't fall short of any skills required of a businesswoman, because it said that Fatima Zahra had more than 400 employees, and these employed people were poor people who gained a lawful source of income by working for Fatima Zahra. It is said that Fadak bore so much fruit and wealth that Imam Ali would have to come home bags full of coins, and they would then do the accounting of it. Then the money would be distributed amongst the poor, the widows and the orphans who didn't have any source of income. If we can analyse this part of Fatima Zahra's life, then we can get a better understanding what Islam says about women and careers. For one, it's quite obvious that Fatima Zahra qualified as a successful businesswoman. So there is nothing wrong with women having businesses, or in fact any appropriate career. So can we stop here? We already know Islam is okay with women having careers. But no, we have to look at other things and take other things into consideration before jumping to any conclusions. So the second thing we see is that how Fatima Zahra went about her business. She never compromised her hijab in front of unlawful men. And so she did her business maintaining her hijab. Sadly, this is a big issue with many sisters working in the West. We find that when a job requires something of its employees, many sisters think that for the sake of work it's okay to compromise their hijab. For example, it's unusual not to greet people in a professional setting without shaking their hands, or in a job interview. And many sisters feel they wouldn't get the job, or their managers wouldn't treat them right if they didn't shake their hands. But this is not true at all. In fact, they respect women who refuse to shake their hands. Of course, politely and with the appropriate manners. Another sad case is the medical profession. Now, there's a new rule in the UK, not so long ago, that all staff, medical staff, have to be bare below the elbows when they're near patients. What this means is that they have to roll up their sleeves up to their elbows when they're near the patients. And the sad thing is that the sisters actually roll up their sleeves and believe for the sake of work they can compromise part of their hijab and be in front of other working men with their elbows exposed, with their arms exposed. Now this raises a question. Since when has it been obligatory for a woman to earn a livelihood? We know that Allah has made it a must for men, but there is no such burden on a woman. Neither does Islam say no for women to work, but it doesn't allow women to make compromises to their hijab. Anyway, so many brave women working in the healthcare setting, nurses, doctors, they protested, they asked for their rights and they left their jobs. They weren't willing to compromise. Because of the great number of staff that the hospitals were losing, the Department of Health were forced to compromise their own rules to accommodate Muslim women. And they did. So anyway, the Department of Health issued new guidelines. They made compromise to their own rules, and they said, okay, Muslim women can wear oversleeves. And this is basically gloves that the doctors and nurses wear, but that they start from the wrist and they cover their elbows. And so they don't have to expose their elbows at all. But unfortunately, hardly any of the sisters actually wear them. And they choose the easy way, the way that is sinful, the way that Allah is not pleased with. And this is something that's very sad to know about. So anyway, the third thing we learn from Fatima Zahra is how she spent her wealth. She was rich from her income, and she could have had it all the luxuries. And Imam Ali alayhi salam wouldn't even have to work. That's how much wealth they had. But she didn't spend her wealth by contributing to the household. There's a tradition that says that money from a woman's income is makruh to use it for the household. So why is it bad? Surely it's a good thing, isn't it, to support your husband financially when he's struggling? We know the house of Imam Ali and Fatima Zahra wasn't filled with luxuries. In fact, they barely had food on most days because they always used to give it to the poor. So couldn't Fatima Zahra use her income to support Imam Ali and get food and so on? But she didn't. The fact is that when a woman becomes the breadwinner or has a share in this responsibility, the feeling of manliness starts to increase in her, and she starts to make herself independent from her husband. And the opposite effect happens to the man. He starts to become less manly. Now this puts a burden on the relationship, and it starts to become weaker because now both have an equal say in running of the financial household. And this is not, although this is not wrong, but no one has the overall say because the wife is also putting in money to the household. And at any one time, you will find that there are never two bosses, never two leaders leading one thing. Imam Hassan and Hussein, peace be upon them, were brothers, and there wasn't a big age gap between them. They were equal in knowledge, spirituality, and they both qualified to be imams, the spiritual leaders. However, Imam Hussein was not imam, he was not a spiritual leader. At the same time, his brother Hassan, peace be upon him, was imam. Only after the martyrdom of Imam Hassan did Imam Hussein then take the imamate. This is not to say Imam Hussein was less than Imam Hassan, but it's the way it works. That's how Allah has created things. It goes the same thing for a marriage. It's not to say that woman is less than a man, but Allah has created that only one should be the boss, and that Allah has chosen that to be a man. And so that's how it is. There are psychological effects as well, as the man might feel that the wife cannot do with the amount that he is bringing in. And he might feel guilty and ashamed that he can't provide for his family, because this is how a man is. Like the Imam Ali alayhi salam felt when he couldn't get a pomegranate for Fatima Zahra when she asked for one. Of course, only after he insisted that she asked for one. So what can we do with the wealth? Anything else really is okay, anything that's lawful. But Fatima Zahra shows us the best way to spend the wealth that's earned by the woman. She showed us that the money spent in the way of Allah, like helping the poor, the community, the advancement of Islam, is what will bring blessings in her life and income. So once again, to summarize these points, one is that Islam supports women to pursue a career. Secondly, is that her hijab should never be compromised. And thirdly, her intention for earning an income should not be to support her husband or the household, but should be to spend in the way of Allah, and also to choose a career where she benefits the society and spreads the message of Islam. Most important thing to remember above all is that Fatima Zahra didn't do any of these things without first looking after the household and providing her family, her husband and children with love and warmth. And this is one of the best deeds of a woman. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us knowledge and the capacity to become liberated women, the way Islam has shown us through Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.